tutorial starts with a song, but it's only a few seconds long. Let's get started with animation. Hello friends, today we talk about custom attributes. Sounds very abstract. It's very useful. We touch on subjects like the quick sets, which make it very convenient to pick a whole arrangement of control vertices, for example, or faces in a polygon structure. We'll also talk about the set-driven key, and the set-driven key is key to creating new attributes. It sounds complicated, but I'll show you a simple example with 3 custom attributes which we'll create. The important thing to consider here is if you create a character animation, you need concise instructions and attributes to control the rig of your skeleton. For example, move the leg forward. There is no such thing by default in Maya where you can just move the leg forward. You would have to rotate certain joints, etc. So a custom attribute would be combining these little things: joint rotation, joint 11, joint 12, rotation in so many degrees in the x-axis, for example, and then you achieve a simple way to animate that leg using a custom attribute. We won't do this with skeleton today, but we'll use it in a more general way with geometry. Enjoy. Let's start with creating an object. I go to the front window and I'm in the NURBS world here within NURBS surfaces. You can just click on polygon modeling and create a polygon surface or use a default surface, one of the primitives, but I'll go here and I click a few times and press enter, and in the perspective window it looks like this. And when I use the revolve, I get a revolved surface like this. It is dependent on the curve, on the layout of that curve, and when I'm in component mode I can change and modify it. By the way, I have on Udemy and Skillshare I have NURBS modeling tutorials, a 12-part course which is going into details with all these things. The links are in the description for this video here. Okay, we're fine with our geometry, and let me just give it a nicer color. New material, Arnold standard surface shader, and I make it well, slightly blue like this, maybe a light blue like this, bluish green, very elegant. Now let's go to the let's select it, and here when I press Ctrl A I see the channel box. I have all these parameters here which we use to translate, rotate, scale and visibility, and I want new attributes down here, and we'll create actually 2 attributes. One is dealing with CVs. In the polygon world that would be vertices. Right mouse click and control vertex, and now I just select, well, the top ones here, and I want to put them in a group, so to say. It's not a real group because you can only put objects into a group, and these are not objects, they're just control vertices. They describe a surface, they are not real objects. But for this purpose we have this nice tool, and it's under create, sets and quick select set. We create a quick select set from these selected CVs. I call it set CV or CVs. Okay, it appears here in the outliner. If you don't see the outliner, click here. The outline is back, and when you open this group, it's not a real group, it's a set. You see all the CVs we picked. For example, the CV 6, 5, whatever. And it's just for the purpose of selecting them more easily. Now we'll create a new attribute. We need to go back to object mode, and the attribute wants to be here. Control A brings us the attribute editor. We could also go to modify and add attribute, but we have an attribute option right here in the attribute editor, and we add an attribute. Now the add attribute control box appears. It has 3 tabs, new, particle and cloud, and we just do a new one and we call it CVs, or top CVs, because we picked CVs at the top. Keyable float. Why float? Because float means any kind of number, and we enter a minimum, actually a minimum of -10, a maximum of +10, and the default setting for our slider, which we'll create just in 1 second, is 0. We add it. It is not appearing here. We don't see it here, but in the channel box you see it. It's top CVs. It's with a default value of 0, and when you're back to the attribute editor, you can go to the first tab. You see under extra attributes the top CVs which we created. When we move the slider, nothing happens because it's just a name and a slider. It doesn't have a function. And we'll create a function now. How do we do this? We need the set-driven-key function. We're under animation, and we have the key menu here. If you are under modeling, for example, you don't see it. You need to be under animation, and under key you find set-driven-key. We set the set-driven key. Sounds a bit strange, but that's the way it goes. The set-driven key has been integrated into my since version 1 or 2. I don't remember exactly, but it's very old and it's so powerful that nobody can neglect it these days. Set-driven key controls one or more values with other values. So we'll select our object and we select it as the driver. Load the driver. We click here. And now we see the revolved surface, this surface here, and here we have the top CVs attribute, which we just created. The driven part is what we want the top CV slider to control. And we want it to control the revolved surface CVs. These CVs which we picked in that set. And now you see the purpose of this set. We just easily pick them here. And now we need to load them as the driven ones because they are being driven by the top CVs. Load driven. And we have a very lean menu here because CVs cannot be rotated in scale. They're infinitely small dots, but they can be changed in X, Y, and Z. So with the Shift key, I select all 3 of them, and I've selected the top CVs here. Now I need this slider. Where is it again? Well, I can just select the revolved surface, and the slider is here. And now I have the slider set to 0, which is the default. This is basically the starting point. This is where nothing has changed. And I set a key. Just let's meditate on this menu. We have a driver. The driver is this slider. It's not driving anything yet. It's supposed to drive the driven. The driven are the CVs with their X, Y, and Z values. All these little dots. And when we press key here, we mean that in the 0 position of this slider, all the CVs in this selection should be at their original position. So I select and press the key function now. Result, 32 keyframes have been set. This is very nice. And now when I move the slider all the way to the left, -10, and I reselect my points here, so I set it to a minus position. Now I just move them down and a little bit to that side and to the back. and I set yet another key. Now I've lost my attribute top CVs. That's why I need to go back to the revolved surface. Now I have it here, and when I go back to 0, I have this motion. And from the side view, it goes like this. This is exactly what I did. Now, I don't want to lose my attribute editor again. I had to click here, and now I'm losing the CVs. So I copy this tab, and it stays here. And under extra attributes, I have the top CVs. It's the same as here. I do it because in just a second, I need to pick the CVs again. Now, that's what I'm going to do now. I move the slider all the way to the right, and I select all the revolved surface points, and I move the surface points to the front and high up. And I set another key here. Just meditation again, where the driver is the new attribute, the custom attribute top CVs, the attribute we created, and we're controlling the X, Y, and Z values of these points. So I set another key. Now the slider works like this. And that's exactly what we wanted. Now the slider has a function. When we type in 0, we're back at the very default at the beginning. Now we create something else as a second attribute. Let's close this and select the object again, the revolved surface, and we create another attribute. Add attributes, and we call this attribute curve scale. Float again, and -10 to 10 with a default of 0, and I add this attribute. It is here now, curve scale. Now I need to load that driver again because it is not updated yet. It sees only the top CVs as the extra attribute, but when I load the driver, I have the curve scale here now. I need something else, which is the driven one, and that's that curve. So I select the curve and press on load driven. Now this is the curve, which is being driven by this new attribute, by the curve scale attribute, which I just created. Again, as before, I select the surface and I copy that tab with the extra attributes, and I'm dealing with the curve scale now. Okay, we called it curve scale because I want to scale that curve. And I want to scale that curve in a certain dimension. So let me pick that curve and press the R key for scaling. And this is the way I scale it. And when you look in the attribute editor on the right, you see it's scaling in X. So just select the X scale. So the curve scale attribute controls the scaling in X of our curve number 1. And I'm in the neutral position. Let me actually go back to the default, to the original, and I set a key. Now I move the slider all the way to the left. That means I scale it smaller. Like this, I set another key. And I go here and make it bigger. And I set yet another key. And that's all I wanted to do today. Now you can delete the set because we've done everything with it. And under Revolve Surface, you find the animation sliders, which you can use now at lib. This is extremely important for character animation, as I said at the beginning, because you give the animator just parameters or attributes which tell him something. Move the leg forward. This could be, instead of top CVs, that could be move the leg forward or the left leg forward. And this could be raise the hand. So this is what these extra attributes are about. And with this, I'll leave you for now. Bye bye.